All right, let's see. Starting the stream. Whoa, loud. Yo, Chip. What a night. What a night. Man, I've had so much stuff going on. Hey, Glenn Roach. What's going on? What's up with this ad? All right, hopefully everything's streaming well. If it is, it looks like it's streaming nicely. I'm gonna unplug here. I think 42% is good. This way I can monitor everything that's going on. Man, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Token Taxonomy Act. I'll let a few people jump in here. Man, I was on watching DNI for a little bit. Oh, come on now. Is it my network? Can't tell if it's oh, it's me dropping out of the stream or look at that, 19. Everything looks healthy. Man, I can't tell if it's my what's dropping out. Now let me look over here real quick. Looks like I timed out. My timed out? Alright, I don't know. Phone, everything looks alright. I'm gonna pop this chat out over here. Let me pop out the chat. Okay, cool. Alright, let's see what happens if I pop this chat out, if it works. There we go. Now I can actually see what I'm doing. Ed French, what's going on? Alright, hopefully we don't get too much lag, too much delay, getting everything situated here with OBS. We've gone through a number of different new settings. What's up, Dennis? Tuning in from Kuwait. Glenn from Australia. Nice. Awesome. All right. You know, we got a couple people in here. Got a number of things I wanted to talk about. So I started putting together some ideas for Redondo Beach. Welcome. Soft metals. Huh. I spent half the time. I know. I'm gonna get one. Give me a moment. I'm definitely gonna upgrade this computer. Drive me crazy. At least I got something to talk about when I start off the video for the first few minutes. Mike, what's up? Phoenix, welcome. I do not, Leonard. I believe in diversification. So XRP is one, but I definitely invest in other things. So anyhow, let me get started. We got a little group here, so we can kick it off. I want to talk a little bit about the Token Taxonomy Act. I got to turn the volume down on this over here. Hang on a minute. There we go. Let's all right, let's talk a little bit about the Token Taxonomy Act. This is something that you guys, if you're on Twitter, you've seen it passed around a little bit. If you've seen it on YouTube, you've seen, you know, multiple people talking about the Token Taxonomy Act. It's something that is really, at this point, in my opinion, it's probably one of the most important pieces of legislation that's actually being introduced, or hopefully will be introduced through the Congress. And I can tell you, nothing is really going to impact the economy directly in a positive way, as will the Token Taxonomy Act, and especially since it has to do with regulatory clarity in regards to digital assets. So this is something that's definitely near and dear to all of us. Myron, what's up? So hey, this is Jeff with the HODL Report. I'm glad you guys could join in for Evening Crypto. We have a lot of great things to go over, and as in every day, it seems like there's a lot of positives, and then there's a lot of FUD. But let's focus on some of the positives. And what I really want to start with, I want to take a look back, way back to December of 2018. I know that was a long time ago, and it's hard for us to remember exactly what we're all doing back in December of 2018. But that was actually when the original Token Taxonomy Act was introduced before Congress. It was referred to as HR 7356. The reason why I bring that up is because I want to remind everybody exactly, and obviously you guys can do a Google search and find this, but I want to talk a little bit about the significance of this act as it's presented. And as we've seen, obviously, if you go through all the bills being introduced to Congress, nothing is going back to really, make a change to things that are impacting the economy that have been around now since the early 1930s. So it's amazing to me. So first and foremost, the Token Taxonomy Act seeks to amend the Securities Act of 1933. So think about the fact that the Securities Act hasn't been changed significantly all these years. So first and foremost, the Securities Act of 1933. Secondly, the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. Now, the goal here of the Token Taxonomy Act by amending both the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, and you can go back and see a video that I did a little while back, specifically going into this. But the goal here is to exclude digital assets, digital tokens from the definitions of a security, to direct the Securities and Exchange Commission to actually enact, and I'm just reading a summary here, but to enact certain regulatory changes regarding digital units secured through public key cryptography, to adjust taxation of virtual currencies. Now, in addition to amending the Securities Act of 33 and the Securities Exchange Act of 34, they're also seeking to amend the IRS Code of 1986. So the last time we saw a significant change of the IRS Code was in 86. So now what this is referring to then is, again, adjusting taxation of virtual currencies held in individual retirement accounts to create a tax exemption for exchanges of one virtual currency to another. So how is that important? So right now, if you buy, and when we all know that, if you buy a Bitcoin and you sell it, or you go and you buy an XRP, if you make a profit, that profit is currently taxable. So if you do that 100 times over, you have to track 100 times over those exchanges because that is a taxable event. And so in this case, what they seek to do is create a tax exemption for that occurrence. Now, if you go back and you read HR 7356, that amount of tax exemption will be $600 per transaction occurrence. So that has a lot of importance, a lot of significance, especially as it was the first. We don't know exactly how they're going to reintroduce it, what kind of minor tweaks and changes they're making to it. But what we do know at this point, just to reiterate, is that they're clarifying, really dotting their I's and crossing their T's, which they've already done, and that already happened maybe about a month ago, to make sure that it passes muster. At this point, what's needed, exactly what Stephen Chip is mentioning, is that they need one Democrat for every one Republican. So right now we know the primary sponsor is Warren Davidson, representative from Ohio. They're looking to add another key Democrat who sits, or a key Democrat who sits on the Financial Services Committee. So I can't stress how important this is. And we saw, if you guys were following Twitter, if you guys follow Rob Cash, he just did a reach out. And actually, this is such a pivotal moment right now, because of other things that are really happening in this space, and due to the fact that there's other things happening in this space in general, there's too much distraction, way too much. Nice, great. Let me hide that. All right, wonderful. There's just way too much distraction, and so we're seeing that some of these Democrats are starting to focus on things outside of what could potentially impact the digital asset space. So we see Darren Soto from Orlando, who was the original co-sponsor along with Warren Davidson back in December, and his focus is starting to drift a little bit. So Democrats as a whole might be seeing other things that are more important than passing legislation like this. However, the Warren Davidson office thinks otherwise, and they see the significance, so they're pushing forward. They're creating the momentum. And myself, along with Stephen Chip and others in the community, have taken a very active role in trying to stimulate some excitement within the grassroots level, in addition to doing some outreach to the congressional offices, in addition to staying in direct contact and finding out what's happening with the Warren Davidson team as it relates to what's going on with the Token Taxonomy Act. So at this point, all I can stress is that anybody who's watching right now, anybody that if you do a reach out to your congressional rep, find out what they're doing, find out what they know about the Token Taxonomy Act, and find out where they stand on it. There's a high probability chance that what you pass on, whatever information you can provide, will be extremely, extremely helpful. So let me look through some of the notes here. See, sorry, okay, so there's a lot of questions here. Tony, XRP Carolina, when what pass? And I think Stephen Chip brought that up here. Needs Dem support. That's 100%. We mentioned that. The exemptions are key. Just need to get senators on board. Great point. So here's what needs to happen. So first and foremost, there's a number of different hurdles when it comes to the Token Taxonomy Act. Hurdle number one, the Warren Davidson team needs to find a Democrat on the Financial Services Committee that will co-sponsor. With that, then they need multiples. On the Republican side, there's already multiple people on the Republican side that are willing to co-sponsor, that have previously co-sponsored other bills or have sponsored their own bills when it comes to digital assets. So having one for one, if they can get some of these key Democrats, and actually if you look, hang on a second. Let me make sure I get the right name here. I don't want to mess this up. Hang on a second. Pull it up on my phone real quick. He's in. Hang on a second. I just posted it. Let's see. Where did it go? Hang on one second. Here we go. No. Okay. Rep. Bill Foster. So Bill Foster is on the blockchain caucus. And so he is based out of Illinois. Rep. Bill Foster is a Democrat in Illinois. He would be a key person to reach out to if there's anybody that's watching right now. If you want to jump in and actually have some sort of an impact in this space, definitely reach out to Bill Foster. All right, so as we get into it, so now when we're talking about embracing the Token Taxonomy Act, when we're talking about each one of us taking time to reach out to our congressional representative, again, we just read the Token Taxonomy Act. What is the significance that we're really discussing here? And what we're focused on is regulatory clarity. So the U.S. government, and the goal here is for the U.S. government to fully embrace digital assets as a true asset class. Now, when they do that, obviously we know it's going to have a major impact. And the reason why we know that is because it's already having a major impact globally, countries around the world. Now, without such clarity, the U.S. government is going to continue really to slip behind the rest of the world, and companies are going to continue moving outside of the U.S. And really at that point, they're bringing their technology, their jobs, and their money elsewhere. So to me, that's a huge concern. All right, let's see what we got here. No need for grassroots. It is a global event, yes. I agree. Where'd that comment go? Tony XRP, it's definitely a global event. We need grassroots in the U.S., primarily because we need to reach out to our congressional representatives. We need to get these people on board. And now think about it from this perspective. So imagine, if you look at the average age of a congressional rep, and you look at, let's say, Maxine Waters, who's the head of the Financial Services Committee. What is her skill set using an iPhone or Android or even getting on the computer? I have no idea, but I'm sure there's some complexity there. So now imagine trying to educate somebody, and then you look at the average age across the board. Look at Nancy Pelosi. Look at some of these in that category, and this is the issue. This is going to be the big hurdle that we need to overcome. So when we discuss digital assets, we need to bring the language and tone it down to simplify it to a point that they truly can comprehend and understand it. And one of the first and foremost things that we need to do, and really, I would like to see this embraced across the spectrum. And I believe a Digital Asset Investor had mentioned this a while back. And this is something that I've spoken about outside of the digital asset space on a different topic, but it has to do with terminology. And when you use incorrect terminology, or you use terminology that has a negative connotation or a negative slant to it, you could really impact or detrimentally impact the space that you're discussing. So when I'm referring to terminology, I'm referring to crypto or cryptocurrency. So we all easily utilize that terminology. We use that language. Now think about it in terms of a digital asset. So now you go to a Nancy Pelosi or a Maxine Waters or somebody else, and you say, I want to talk to you about cryptocurrencies. Crypto, what's the first thing that pops into their mind is something negative, even though crypto might come from cryptography or whatever, it might come from. But for them, just that terminology is already putting a slant. Now, they're already embracing, old stereotypes of a digital asset, of a Bitcoin that really has to do with the digital asset or the Bitcoin being used for nefarious purposes, trying to avoid taxation or whatever it might be. So really at this point, again, bringing it down and trying to simplify it, trying to adjust and changing the terminology for which we're actually trying to present the case. I like this one. Where'd it go? Crypto Fed, Maxine Waters will screw up a cup of coffee. Yeah, I mean, There's quite a few of them in Congress that probably have never made their own cup of coffee, or they haven't in quite a while. And then they're preaching down to the people, telling us what we need to do. And so it's kind of mind-boggling. Hang on, I got to shut this thing off behind me. That was killing me. All right. So let's see here. Okay, so let's go back through here. Where was I? All right. So now here's the key. So as I mentioned, so we're talking about bringing we want to make sure that the U.S. doesn't move out, that companies don't move outside the U.S. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, we're protecting our future, and it truly is our future. It's our children's future. If you believe in blockchain, if you believe in digital asset right now, then we believe it in the future. And so that means that we're looking out for the betterment of our future, our children's future, and potentially even their children's future by adjusting and really accommodating to a new asset class that's really moving things in such an amazing direction. And we're talking about being able to embolden people to take part in the economy. And to me, that has significance beyond anything that's really comprehensive, beyond our comprehension. So, if you think about it from a perspective that, whether it's in the United States, if you go into an inner city environment where they're not utilizing their own bank accounts, where they don't feel that they're part of the economy. You go over to a developing country. Hang on a second. It gets super dry in here, and so I got to add a humidifier. You'd think it's always humid around here, but so anyhow, so here's the thing. When I look at it again, and I look at the fact that, again, we focus in on our future, we focus in on our children's future. Now let's look outside. Let's look outside of the U.S. a little bit. Let's go to Japan. Let's go to Korea. Let's go to Thailand. Let's go to Vietnam. Let's go to Liechtenstein. Let's go to Estonia. Let's go to Switzerland, Malta, or even Wyoming and Ohio. All of these areas, they seem to get the idea that digital assets and the blockchain technology is the wave of the future. So at this point, it's truly time that the U.S. Congress also recognizes this significance. And this is really why, I felt that right now I had to get on. I felt that Singapore, I think Singapore is another one as well. There's just so much. Let me look up here real quick in the chat. Water's going to jail. There's going to be a lot of heads rolling, I'll tell you what, in government after the Mueller report came out. Just wait. Hey, CAK, what's up? Good to see you on. You're better off diversifying. We have plenty of time to accumulate more. Leonard Gonzalez. Yep. Nobody knows, and that's the thing. Reach out to Bill Foster. Thank you, Chip. Yes, Dam in Illinois. You can look him up. Send him a tweet. You can look him up. Call him in DC. Call his office. If you do make a phone call, try to reach out. Look for the legislative assistant in the office. If you can find the legislative assistant, who, especially in Bill Foster's office, who would then be responsible for looking at bills, especially like the Token Taxonomy Act, that's the key person you want to talk to. They're the ones that are going to really help push things. So that would be a key person, whether it's in Bill Foster's office or somebody else's. That's definitely something we can all do, and I highly recommend that. So if you want to really see politics at work, this is the opportunity right now. I don't know, any other act or bill at this moment where you can have such a positive impact. This is really it. This is the one. Who was it that said, and I kind of got sidetracked. Let me go back up. Someone said if it doesn't pass Senate, it's dead. And that's a really good point. Just scrolling back up, it kind of, let me see. Let's see here. I missed it. So anyhow, the hurdles, that's what I was talking about. So hurdle number 1 is finding a Democrat to co-sponsor. Hurdle number 2 is getting it through the Financial Services Committee. Hurdle number 3 is passing Congress. Hurdle number 4 is then passing Senate, and hoping that the rest of the Congress, when they decide to view and vote on the bill, that they don't add a bunch of junk to it. When it goes to Senate, that the Senate doesn't add a bunch of junk to it. If we can clear getting a Democrat, clear the Financial Services Committee, clear Congress, get to Senate, get Senate to vote on it, then it gets in front of the president. So there's a lot that has to happen. But on the plus side, if we look back to some of the bills that passed in January, I'll have to pull up the exact, I think it was like 922 or 924. I think that it was that one, or it might have been 430 something. I'll have to look it up again. They were introduced, they had to do with digital asset committees set up to research and monitor digital assets so that, and identify whether or not they're being utilized for raising funds for terrorism or etc. That passed Congress within about 2 weeks. It was introduced beginning middle of January, and it passed by the end of January. So that's how fast something can pass through Congress if they have the desire and the will to do it. Let's see here. Okay, so we definitely don't want to be the tail trying to wag the dog. I think it's time definitely to take some leadership position in this entire thing. So this is it. Token Taxonomy Act. Get behind it and see what we can do. It's definitely significant. So now let's take a step into a little bit of FUD, and I find it so interesting because the FUD keeps popping up almost on a daily basis, and sometimes I just ignore it, but this time I really couldn't ignore it. So hang on a second. What does it say? Dan, Dems will pass this. They just have to stop looking so much at Trump. They need to get their act together and start working is what they need to do. They need to really stop wasting taxpayer dollars and time by chasing phantom ideas that they have. So all right, so check this out. I'm sure you guys saw this news because news like this keeps dropping, but here we go. Here, okay. So let me see. All right, this is okay. FUD from a bank interested in taking. Okay, so this was Bank of America. Now, Bank of America. My question here. Let me see. Where's the article? Let me pull this article up here real quick because I think it's interesting. And this is where. And after we look at this article, we're going to go into other articles that came out right around the same period of time, and you can really see such a counterbalance. So before we, kind of dig into some of the ideas that came out of this article, we have to look at what is the primary motivation of a key opinion leader within a bank, whatever that might be, whatever leadership role they have in that banking organization. What is their motivation to spreading misinformation or FUD when it has to do with blockchain or digital assets? That's the number one question we have to first ask ourselves. What is their motivation? What is behind that? So here we see, and this was on CNBC. It came out earlier today. Bank of America tech chief is skeptical on blockchain, even though Bank of America has the most patents for it. So if you go back, Bank of America currently holds and according to this article, and I was going to look up and get an exact count to see if this is accurate, but they hold 82 blockchain related patents. They've been working on them for years. You can go back, I believe, to even before 2014 when they were filing for patents. So they've been filing for blockchain patents for the past 5 or 6 years. That's amazing to me. And then you see other organizations like Walmart and others that were doing the same. Now, the Bank of America tech chief, what is amazing about that, here she holds this high-tech role within this banking organization, coming out and stating the fact that she's skeptical. Now, it's not so much that she's stating her skepticism, because of course she can do that if she wants to. It's how she did it. And so she came out in a statement that said, "In my private scoreboard, in the closet, I'm bearish," she says. But she's no longer in the closet if she's coming out on a major publication and stating the fact that she's now skeptical. So I look at it and say, okay, you were hiding your opinion, but now all of a sudden you're coming out and stating your skepticism. You're doing it in a very public way, and you're doing it at a time where we see some big trends that are moving against the banking industry, where we see digital assets and digital asset exchanges that are moving slowly or maybe rapidly into an area that banks primarily controlled. And then on the other hand, you also have organizations like Ripple that are moving into a space that is SWIFT, that controls cross-border payments, and a space that's a conglomerate of banks like Bank of America and many others. And what's interesting is that Bank of America in the early days was one of the original partners, or at least held a board seat within the Ripple organization. I'm sure they still have some form of a relationship there, being I believe that they did in the early years. I don't know, but again, so you see all of these different things that are happening from a financial perspective. You see what's happening with JP Morgan launching their JPM coin, and this is after they've spread a ton of FUD themselves. But I find this one and the timing of it really, really interesting. The FUD is to buy more time. That's what, Ed, exactly. Ed French says earlier on, Bank of America is a Ripple partner. Yep, that's what I thought. And so, let's see here. That's a great idea. Yep. So, all right. So anyhow, according to what she's saying, and this is Kathy Bassant, which again, this is Bank of America, who has accumulated more blockchain patents than anyone else. And here's some of the patents that they put in this article. Inventions ranging from blockchain powered ATMs to storage for cryptocurrency keys. So they across the spectrum. So she goes on to say that she's open-minded, but in private she's bearish on the technology in general. So obviously she's getting into this discussion, getting into this space. But is she joining people like they bring up economist Nouriel Roubini? They brought him up in the article. So obviously there's a little bit of a taint to this article. And like I said, FUD and Nouriel Roubini, and quoted here in this article, stated that blockchain and digital asset, blockchain in general, is the most overhyped technology in history. And so you kind of go through this, and then the key here is, then they put a big bold statement: show me the use case. And so this is really what got me fired up, because I saw show me the use case, and then as you go down, where is it here? Okay, so here's where she's questioning the use case. Here we go. Okay, so here's a direct quote from her. She said, "I haven't seen one use case that even scales beyond an individual or small set of transactions. All of the big tech companies will come and say blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. I say, show me the use case. You bring me the use case and I'll try it." So then she says, "I want it to work spiritually. I want it to make better, faster, cheaper, more transparent, more, all of those things." So it's just bizarre how they phrase things. Maybe she's being taken out of context. Who knows? She didn't write this article, but the article was definitely written about her, interview with her, and maybe others. If Bank of America is still from their perspective, a partner with Ripple, then why in the world is she coming out and making these kind of statements? Maybe there's something else going on, larger than what we can focus on. But here's what I do know, and this is what I think is, and again, when she said show me the use case, and this article just came out, so then I look at it and I say, okay, great, you want to look at the use case? Let's look at another article that just came out today. And here we go. I'm not sharing the screen on this, but anyhow, so the next article that came out today: Samsung SDS president and CEO, blockchain can improve productivity in manufacturing. Okay, there's a use case. So Besson of Bank of America, show me the use case. She doesn't believe it exists. And then the very same day, and this showed up on Cointelegraph, and I'm sure you can find the same article elsewhere, the president and CEO of Samsung SDS, an IT and consultancy subsidiary of the South Korean tech conglomerate Samsung, has said that blockchain can improve productivity in the manufacturing industry. And so that is a huge statement. And it goes on and on and on. And kind of gets into it. But I found that to be very enlightening, considering the position that Bassant kind of left out in this article, in this interview. Then if you look back where this other article, here we go, a little bit out of order. Okay, so then the next article, this one appeared on the 23rd. What's today? Today's the 25th or 26th. So this came out on the 23rd, and this article, let's see, where was it? CoinDesk. UPS targets B2B sales with new blockchain e-commerce platform. That looks like real life use. That looks like utility. They're going after the B2B sales. They're building an e-commerce platform in blockchain. And it says here, US-based shipping giant UPS has announced a new blockchain integration aimed to bring business-to-business sales into the digital age. So you know, again, you know, I go back and I look and I say, okay, what in the world? What is her statement? What is the meaning behind it? You know, what's the purpose that they're coming out in this article? Again, I don't know. It could be that she was taken out of context. I don't know. But you know, to me, you know, it's kind of a bizarre. It's bizarre that she would allow something like that to then, if she was taken out of context, it might be out of her power. But it's just a mix of her statements. You know, she is hoping for the best. Spiritually, she wants it. In the closet, she's bearish, but she supports it. You know, so she's kind of all over the map. Bank of America holds over 82 patents in blockchain. Then she's saying that there's no use case. And then the very same day, boom, Samsung, UPS. Obviously, we know Ripple. Obviously, we see what the Stellar organization is doing with IBM when it comes to cross-border payments. Obviously, you know, there's others that are in development, and we're starting to see what's going on in the logistics space. We're starting to see what's happening in the what is that? I don't know. I forget what it is. I think it's BITA. What does it stand for? Something to do with gas. And then here's another one, and this one just came out. Where'd it go? All right, here we go. This one, okay, what was the date on this one? This one I thought was, I've been holding this one back for a little while. This one came out on the 18th. Where did this article? This was on CCN. Korea's biggest messaging app, Kakao, which is Kakao, to integrate crypto wallet for 44 million users. Now, if there's no real world utility and she hasn't seen it, she hasn't seen the utility, then what in the world is that? And when we see what's happening in Japan, we see what's happening in Korea and how they're embracing this space with blockchain and digital assets. And why in the world would any of these big companies invest the amounts of money and the time and effort to put this stuff together if there wasn't a real world use case for it? Obviously, when we look at it from a growth perspective, when we look at Ripple, what Ripple can do with the Ripple net, eventually when XRapid goes fully live, and we start to see banks incorporating the XRapid solution as part of the trio within RippleNet, and we start to see the full utility of that digital asset, that would be full realized utility of that digital asset. When we see the IBM WorldWire that is currently utilizing the XLM digital asset, those are real world use cases. So again, whether you like that company, you don't like the company, you like it, that's irrelevant. The point is that here's an article, and this is on mainstream media, CNBC, and again, it's coming out of Bank of America, so it's mind-boggling. All right, so where are we at here? Let me go back and look at South Korea, ICX. What is ICX? KB, welcome to the chat. Going back through HODLBot. I'll have to take a look at HODLBot and I'll report back. Let me write that down. I'm not familiar with it. HODLBot.io. All right, made a note. Let's see what else. Jack 33. Let's see. I tweeted my reps. Everyone needs to do the same. I agree. Do whatever you can do. It's awesome. Let's see. Salvador. Waiting for regulation. That's it. You know, we're getting regulation across the board. There's also some really interesting things that are happening in other countries like India. I know Tony over on Thinking Crypto had talked about India. If you go back, one of my original videos that I made, I got into talking about India and what's happening over there, and really the significance of what digital assets could mean for that economy over in India, and what India as a leader in this space could actually mean. And so, to me, it's interesting. I believe it's supposed to go through the court. I haven't really dug in to do some updated research on it. Maybe one of you guys have. But what I do know is that from the court level, the central bank over there, there was definitely some political wrangling going on. I believe most, if not all, of the digital exchanges that had existed in India shut down. Vietnam's definitely getting in with some regulatory clarity. Thinking about it, XRP, that's awesome. I appreciate that feedback. So what's so amazing about India, and again, as we get into some of these developing countries, what's so amazing about a Vietnam, what's so amazing about a Thailand, what's so amazing about even in Japan or in South Korea embracing it, but even more so, you know, when we get into hang on one second. All right. Boom. Okay. So, all right. So India, and as a developing nation, and if you look at what's going on in India, and if you look what has happened in India over the past year, there was a government policy to basically remove fiat currency from the marketplace. If you go back and you look at some of the articles, I think it's interesting. So obviously, there's a large economy within India that exists strictly 100% in fiat. They don't use credit cards. They don't bank. They'll never be able to bank based on the amounts of money that they make. And we're talking about individuals that probably make less than the equivalent of, if they're lucky, $50 to $100 a month. Now, then there's others within that same economy that make considerably less than that. If you, as an engineer coming out of school, you could be a computer engineer, whatever. You can find people like that and hire them in for like $300 or $400 per month. It's mind-boggling. And you have people that you'll hire a full-time driver over in India for $100 a month. And so you can't even imagine, how somebody can actually survive and exist on amounts of money like that, let alone be a participant in the overall economy beyond fiat currency. So now, and when you go over to India, it's really astonishing. Now, I've been over there multiple times, and it's always shocking. And so the first time, I think it's the biggest shock. Then you go back and say, okay, I'm going to see something different and amazing, and you get shocked again. And every time, yeah. So that's exactly it, Stuart. That's they pay them, peanuts, and these are highly educated individuals. And so think about it from another perspective. That if you want to have an MRI done it's $250 in India. If you want a CT scan done, it's $150 or $200. If you go to most places here, you want an MRI, you're going to pay about $1,500, $3,000. You know, so and they're using the same MRIs as they do over here, but so you get into these individuals in the economy in India that are getting paid what we would consider peanuts, but somehow they're surviving on it. Somehow they're surviving on that $100, $200, $300 a month. But with that amount of money, how in the world are they going to be a part of an economy? Meaning, how are they going to bank? Why would they put that fiat currency into a bank? And if for those that are existing outside of a job market, to where maybe they're trading whatever they're selling in the market, maybe they're making, you know, like I said, $50 to $100 equivalent per month, and it's all fiat currency. Why would they go through the trouble of trying to bank it when banking fees would take a specific percentage of those rupees away from them? It doesn't make any sense. So what the government had done last year, they decided to enact policy that they wanted to remove 75% of the fiat currency from the marketplace. 75%. So obviously there was some motivation for them because they want to move that entire fiat-based economy, which India is almost like a dual economy. So in the U.S., for the most part, we don't really see the dual part of the economy. It's not as visible necessarily, although it does exist. And if you look around, you'll actually identify that it exists in broad daylight. So if you go to like the check cashing stores, those are individuals utilizing a business that's taking a high percentage fee from an individual's paycheck, because most likely that individual does not have a bank account and is living in a fiat world. They're living in a fiat-based economy themselves. So although their paycheck might have taxes taken out, etc., so they're at least contributing from that perspective. So the government here might not be as hyper-focused on those individuals. But in India, you have a very large percentage of the population that exists and lives within this fiat currency. So yeah, Stuart, those would be, what we'd call the unbanked, or in many cases they could be the underbanked. So however you want to term them. So if they have money, and let's say the cost of holding a bank account is nothing, they put their money in a bank account, but that's where it ends, because the amount of money that they have doesn't allow them to save or invest or hold a credit card or take out a loan on a car or on a house or what have you. But the majority of them exist outside of that entirely. So now imagine an economy that they've now really pushed a large percentage of those people into a predicament where they have no choice but to bank themselves. Because if India is moving away from fiat, so go to a country like Iceland, for instance. So, or if you go to a good number of places over in Europe, just as a middle example, you can go to Germany, England, wherever you want to go, and for the most part, you can use your credit card in most places. However, American Express isn't always taken, and there are, if you don't have the local credit card or the local cash card or whatever, they won't accept it, and so that's problematic. If you're not carrying euro. Now, if you go to Iceland, for instance, Iceland, pretty much everywhere you go accepts credit cards. You could go to the guy selling water and sandwiches, and the little kiosk. If you're going to hike up a mountain or something, there's a little kiosk down there selling water and stuff. So you would anticipate or expect that that would be fiat only, cash only. However, in Iceland, they actually take every credit card, American Express, Visa, MasterCard, etc. And it's amazing. So even if you're buying a bottle of water over there, you can use your credit card. Just like here, if you're it used to be I think it was like $10 or more. It was $25, whatever it was. But now if you want to go buy a bottle of water, you can easily use your credit card. And people are being accustomed to banking within this digital mindset. Now, over in India, again, in a developing form of an economy, they actually don't have that. So they're forcing the hand of individuals to be pushed into a digital form of banking, meaning that they're going to put them. So if they're removing the fiat, they're also enabling the government and the central banks to really make sure that they're collecting their percentage of taxes. They're also enabling them to track the direction the economy is moving in. But think about the difficulty for a large percentage of the population. Now, the population of India, think about is what is it? I want to say it's like 1.2 or 1.3 billion dollars. Billion dollars. Sorry, 1.2 or 1.3 billion people live in India. Of this 1.2 or 1.3 billion people, approximately 200 million of them are wealthy. So that's a staggering number. So you think about India, and you don't really think about a population of 200 million people. The size of the U.S. is what? It's over 300 million, 330, 340. I don't know the exact number. Almost 2/3 of the size of the U.S. is actually is in a considered a wealthy class. Now, of that, you have about 300 million, almost the entirety of the United States. It's considered middle class. This is over in India. So that brings us to about 700 million people. So in India, you have about 700 million people that live in absolute poverty. And that is absolutely staggering. Those are staggering numbers, and like Ed said, it's the second largest population on the planet, China being first. So 700 million people, and you have about 500 million approximately that are middle class to wealthy. Middle class could be relative, but these are people that have disposable income, that can go out, they go to dinner, they buy, they shop, they travel. They have cell phones, but pretty much, a large percentage of the population over in India do have cell phones. But it's also common to see people that are living in basically a hut with a motorcycle. You have the family. They have the family goat, maybe a cow, maybe a horse or a donkey, and a bunch of dogs and whatnot running around. But that could be common. I'm not saying that that's middle class, because when you go into the middle class areas, you have Domino's Pizza, you have Subway, you have McDonald's, you have a whole host of things, which is staggering. And so it's amazing, that exists. But then I think about, you remove 75% of the fiat currency, and where does that put these people? I just went on this long tangent, basically to focus in on the significance of what digital assets could mean, what blockchain technology can mean for a country like India, and why India could be a leader in this industry if they embrace it. And think about India, the numbers of people that they pump out from universities over there with degrees is staggering. And so you have a lot of highly educated people. You allow them to start developing blockchain technology. You allow them to start utilizing digital assets. And you have a country that could flourish. We're talking about the US can flourish. You have a country like India, it could be game changing for a significant percentage of their population. And that's my point. Now you take that same concept and you go to Africa, you go to parts of Latin America, you go all over. It's staggering. As far as the caste system does exist somewhat. Obviously, I think they've been trending away from that, but it still exists, you know, because it's cultural. You know, it's been in their heritage for so long, although they've broken away from it again somewhat. Those same animosities or stereotypes or exclusions still would exist. So it's amazing. So, you know, so that's really, you know, the point, you know, is that here you have countries that are, here, let me, CE, Stewart, Hindu, yep, Hinduism, Jeff Rome, recap. All right, where should we start? I'm glad you could join in. Let's do the fast recap. Token Taxonomy Act, Bank of America FUD, Samsung's embracing blockchain, UPS is embracing blockchain, Korea's biggest messaging service embracing blockchain, and we started talking about India. How's that? Full recap. Let's see, CE. Let's see here. Okay. I read the article today stating that JP Morgan is teaming up with some other partners to create a blockchain to verify luxury items like Gucci. That would be awesome. You know what? That's amazing. I'm not saying that it's amazing JP Morgan is doing it. VeChain. I was going to say, I know I've heard of others like it. There's, you know, things that are popping up to verify value and authenticity. There was something else. No. Well, Binance, there was an article that came out. Binance was hosting an art auction, which I thought was pretty huge. That showed, you know, based on being able to track. And so there's so much significance in being able to provide the authenticity for items, luxury items. You know, there's so many fakes out there. So if you're looking at like Gucci or I don't know, all those different handbags that women get, and some of them are really, really expensive. But I know they have different codes in them, and there's ways they fake them, but then there's ways to identify the real ones from the fake ones. Yeah, it's staggering. Then if you think about watches, think about being able to serialize the watch and know the history of it from inception, from when they constructed it, through the different ownership, potentially. I don't know if you want to exactly know who owned it. I think that would invade people's privacy. However, if you could, you know, somehow being able to maintain the authenticity of an expensive luxury item, especially in the collector's world. So think about any collector item. Think about baseball cards from the heyday. If you look at some of the ones that are super valuable, even today, what was it? It was I think they were called cigarette cards, or shoot, what were they called? I can't remember. Anyhow, they had these little cards, and it was Honus Wagner, I think, was the baseball player on it, and I think that card was sold for like $1.5 million or like $2 million. But being able to maintain the authenticity, you have companies like I think it's PSA and then a couple others that will rate the quality of the card, and they'll serialize that card. But being able to keep track of it would be pretty amazing. You know, I like that idea. And I've heard of VeChain, and maybe that's where, you know, I need to do some more research on that as well. Let me write that down. I know I've got it linked on my computer. from way back. There were a lot of great companies that popped up, and you know, once the bear market hit, you never hear from them again. You don't know what happens. There's another one. Was it? I think it was Siren. It was that was over a year ago. They came out. They were building the a digital asset wallet embedded cell phone with full cryptography, and you know, so that was pretty amazing. That was a while, and that was way before the S10 hit. I have no idea. They're still around because they're still in chats, but you know, I don't know whatever came of them. All right. So I keep looking down because I've got the chat now in two different places. I've got it on my phone, I've got it up here, and I've got notes. So, all right, I'm coming up on the hour here. If there's, let's see if there's anybody else, any other comments. Let me go back through, see if I missed any good chat items. Oh yeah, there was actually another one. God, I don't know why I get into. It was a comedy in India similar to that idea, and the guy was in the U.S. And he was hired. He ran a call center in the U.S. and then he was hired, and his next and he ended up moving over to India, and he had to run a call center in India. That was actually a pretty good movie. That wasn't the Amazing Marigold, but Stewart. But it was, I can't remember the name of it. Let's see here. I think I saw most of these. Definitely lots of great feedback, guys. I love it. I got a couple great ideas. The HODLBot.io I'm going to look into. I'm going to look back into VeChain. I want to get some more ideas on what that's all about. And then I was also putting together some notes on cobalt. So early this morning, I read the white paper on cobalt, and I'm putting together a video on that. I'm hoping to get that done tomorrow, so I can put that out. I just thought it was something interesting to look at and get a little bit in depth. And I don't know if you guys have ever gone through and read white papers, but you'll feel completely, well, if you're not into all the equations and whatnot, you'll definitely feel out of your element. I know I was definitely out of my element reading through it, but as you go through, you can find some good info, good insight, and there's actually English written within the text outside of all the equations. So I thought it was really interesting. It's a really interesting project, and so I'm going to make a video on that and get that out, a short video, just to highlight the importance of cobalt. Jeff Rome, crypto banks, do they really want to implement instant settlement? Yeah, would they take a big hit on the bottom line on transaction costs? I think, you know what, that's a great topic. That's a great question. I like that. I'm gonna write that down here. Yep. Do they really want to implement? Who knows? You know, and that's a question that I ask. You know, I ask myself as well, especially when I see what Bank of America is doing. But you know, to me, it's you know, they're fighting upstream. You know, is that a battle are they gonna win that battle? And then I think about I was talking. I had brought up an analogy using Android and Apple, and I mentioned Microsoft, and someone gave some feedback and said you should have said BlackBerry, comparing it to Swift, and really I look at what these banks are doing. I look at what BlackBerry did, you know, and you know, BlackBerry also really XRP Ranch, what's up, Ed? Glad you can make it back on. You know, you look at these banks, and are these banks, you know, are they holding on to something that really they have, you know, it's really a losing battle. You know, do they know that it's a losing battle? Or, you know, are they trying to go down, you know, with a sinking ship? You know, you look at BlackBerry, and BlackBerry held on to the bitter end, and I was really shocked to see it go away. But we moved from a hardware-based environment to a completely software-based environment. We saw Microsoft suffered that same thing. I think Apple was dying. If Apple hadn't embraced the iPhone, they were definitely losing steam at that point. But then they come out with the iPhone, was definitely a resurgence. BlackBerry was holding strong, but they died, because they held on to what they thought they were. They were dominant in the industry. Everybody had a BlackBerry, and then gone. It just fizzled out. And I see that with Swift. I see that with the banks. And then you look at missed opportunities. You try to look back at some other examples and say, here's some missed opportunity. And a perfect missed opportunity was Microsoft in the mobile market. And they decided that the mobile market wasn't the market that was going to take off, that wasn't important enough. And look at what happened to them. They tried to enter the mobile market and they got killed off too. They didn't succeed. So we don't see microphones any longer, because it didn't work, and then you look at operating systems and you look at how, Google is taking over, and now you have the battle of the browsers. It used to be the Internet Explorer was everything. And now who wants to use a Microsoft browser? I surely don't. You're using Chrome and now you're using Brave. Maybe using used to use Firefox or Opera or one of them. But who wants to use an Internet Explorer? And so it's the same thing with the banks, and that's the question. Are they buying their time because they realize what's happening and they need to position themselves to hold their dominant position, or are they just going down with a sinking ship? That's the question that only they really would know. Let's see, Stuart. Part of the problem with giving them X current is it lets them hold on to Vostra and Ostra, and banks do not want to give that up. That's a possibility. The banks that are holding the Vostra accounts, I think so. What is it? Nostra is our accounts and Vostra is their accounts, and so if you're the bank holding the funds of another bank, obviously you want that liquidity. That's good for you. But if you're the other bank that has to put your liquidity in a different bank, that's not good. But everyone's suffering that same fate at this point. I don't know. I think, to me, when they look at it, and when we analyze it as a layperson, we're not I'm not in banking. I don't know if any of you guys are. I look at it from that perspective and say, how could they not want to get rid of those accounts? How would they not want to stop relying on leaving huge sums of money in all these banks around the world? Why wouldn't they want to pull that liquidity back home? That makes the most sense, I would think. Some of the banks are just trying to outmaneuver the competition without giving up their positioning. It seems like there's always going to be business wrangling going on between them, and they're all going to be jockeying for leadership, especially when they start seeing this. Now, imagine you're a bank that's been around, for decades, and then all of a sudden a Coinbase pops up out of nowhere. And all of a sudden, Coinbase is moving rapidly into a space that could potentially become a full-fledged bank, or Uphold, another fledgling, comes out of nowhere. And obviously, we've seen online banks for years, but now they're not just online banks. These guys are full-fledged exchanges. And so now imagine, then you have international companies like a Binance, fledgling. And now you think, look at these banks over in Europe that have been around, for close to 100 years, and all of a sudden Binance comes up, this young guy, and all of a sudden they're a dominant position. And you look at a Coinbase, an Uphold, a Binance, or the many others out there, and they hold huge sums of liquidity. It's unreal the amounts of money that they hold. And then you have a company like Ripple that, you know, has been around for 7 years, taking a dominant position against Swift, which has been around for over 40 years. You know, and you know, it's amazing. So obviously there's going to be that struggle. There's that struggle amongst themselves. So it's going to be you know, tense times. And then you have the lobbyist groups, you know, from these organizations that are you know, that are lobbying government. And so that's why it's so important from a grassroots perspective that we reach out and we contact our congressional reps so that they know that, you know, people at the grassroots are into and want and see the benefit of blockchain technology and digital assets. See here, KuCoin back in the day, 80 alts plus Bitcoin that are outperforming XRP today. But the real question is, why would you risk Bitcoin on all that? Doesn't even perform like BTC. Would you risk Bitcoin on an alt that doesn't even perform like BTC? That's a long conversation. It should be pretty short. I'm kind of running out of steam here. I'd definitely like to bring that up on the next chat though. I think that we could have a dedicated chat on that. I think it'd be really interesting, Bam, to really get into it and talk a little bit more about an altcoin versus a Bitcoin. I think that would be really interesting to get into that conversation. Let's see, Mercury FX loves XRapid, but says that there are not sufficient payment rails or liquidity. They want Ripple to expand it to other continents. Yep, I think that would be important. Kind of like QT, but killing off 7-Eleven and Circle K. Yep, exactly. The world is definitely 100% changing before our eyes. You know, and you can't take a moment's break to take a breath, because every day something is changing, and it's to me it's amazing. We don't really know. You can't forecast. And, you know, no one has that crystal ball to say specifically. And I keep going back to that interview with Jeff Bezos, when he said, you know, back in the 80s, no one could predict that Microsoft was the one that was going to be the leader. In the 90s, nobody could predict that Google would you know, come out of that, or that an Amazon would come out of that. You know, nobody knew, because there were so many things going on. And I think even now, I mean, obviously there's definitely some criteria that you can highlight and see those that will have the most potential for being the leaders. But anyhow, it's coming up. It's actually over an hour, so definitely want to wrap this up. Man, I really appreciate all you guys coming on tonight, joining in the conversation. It was awesome. Some great ideas for some topics. Bam gave a good topic, you know, to really get into, looking at Bitcoin versus an altcoin, and looking, you know, from back in the day, like he said, you know, you look at, you know, where you were, you know, years and years ago. So, but I think it would be really good to, you know, you could do a nice analysis, and we could get into a full conversation on that, and it would be a nice open floor conversation to have. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, thank you guys all for joining in. Remember on your way out to give a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel. And that's about it. And XRP, Ranch, thank you very much. Alan, thanks. Jeff, thanks. All you guys, Stuart, thank you for being on and participating, and everybody else that's on here. Ed, French, I mentioned you. So it's great. Yeah, just appreciate everyone that's come on and keeps coming on to engage in conversation. So with that, I'll check you guys out on the next video, next live stream. And that's it. Until then, keep on hodling your crypto.